Giant Kokopu are one of a group of native species that have a marine stage, returning to freshwater rivers as juveniles in the spring, where we know them as whitebait. They're classed by the Department of Conservation as at risk, declining. The Rees Webb property at Mangakura is a licensed freshwater fish farm with its own water supply and facilities for breeding Kokopu species. It's home to an 8-year-long private conservation project run by Jerry Rees Webb and his aquaculture consultant Lynn Hamilton Hunter. Their aim is to release the fish into suitable restored waterway habitats to help combat the decline of the species.
That started in about 2012. I took an interest that I'd had a fish farming license for a few years prior to that, and I thought I'd like to try some of the native species that I had on my license. And I knew the Kokopu and whitebait were sort of approaching the endangered stage and were being overfished, and their habitat was disappearing. So I felt that I'd like to try breeding the Kokopu. We started off really trying to produce whitebait because we thought if we produced whitebait, we could take the pressure off the wild fisheries. But we find that it's actually incredibly difficult to produce them in a viable manner. It's costing me about $2,000 a kilo to produce whitebait at the moment. So you can't persuade anybody to buy them at that price. But I feel also that very strongly now about the actual restoration of waterways. And I see around the country there's a lot of farmers restoring their waterways. And therefore, I think that if they could stock their streams and with Kokopu, it would give them live fish back into their streams, and it would help with the preservation of the Kokopu and, I guess, enhance the wild fishery of whitebait. This program is funded by myself. It's cost me about $350,000 so far. It's all pretty low tech. It's all as cheap as we can do it. But COVID-19 coming along has knocked my discretionary funding to pieces. So I am looking for funding at the moment, but I'm a great one in believing that something's always around the corner. And I hope that we get there.
But they're all looking good, eh?
Yes, Lynn, I was very fortunate that she became available to come and work here about 2.5 years ago. Lynn is very experienced in husbandry of these fish. She worked for quite 3 or 4 years now prior to coming here with these fish at Maharangi Tech. And so she has a lot of experience. She's very good with them. She's almost like a fish whisperer. So she understands them. She's got a lot of feeling for them. And I have to attribute that much of our success in the last season is due to Lynn.
Okay, hey Jerry, here's the inanga out of that stream tank that we kept them in. They look really beautiful, and as you can see, they've reabsorbed their eggs and their milk because they were in season not that long ago. So they're loving that stream that we've got them in. So the technical setup here is that we have male broodstock and female broodstock. I literally look at their behaviour in terms of their feeding, whether they're content, if they're distressed, there might be something wrong, I have to sort that out. But generally, we are keeping our fish in good water quality, low density, and they have a really nice feeding regime where I watch their behaviour. So, for instance, when they've just been stripped, they're not very hungry, but we build it up, then they get really hungry, and then their appetite drops. And the only way you know that is by good husbandry skills. So that's what we work towards here, is really good husbandry. These are the ones we hatched out last year. These are the same age. So these are both 1. In the wild, you'll probably find that they'll be about this big when they're 1. So this one's definitely been greedy. We feed the fish on mainly pellets at the moment that are imported, but also we're developing a way to get away from that and do less imported food and more food that we can get either sourced in New Zealand or we produce ourselves. So 1 feed a week is the pellets, but then now 1 feed a week is either mealworms. We've got worms in a wormery that we can feed them. I've sourced low-grade oysters locally as well. So we're supplementing the imported stuff that we kind of have no choice in, but we're supplementing it with stuff that we can source from New Zealand. Let's see how much this big girl weighs. Will tell us approximately how many eggs she will give us this year. Okay. 273 grams. That's pretty big. So she'll probably give us about 50 grams of eggs this year, which is a lot of whitebait for one fish. I'm gonna pop it back. This setup here was originally designed because we were asked to do a release into the Nukamia stream in Ottawa. And we were asked to see if the fish could cope with flow as if they were in a stream. So we designed this to give them the opportunity to have a more natural environment. So it's got 2 ponds and a riverbed, and the water flows through the whole system. If anybody has a stream that is prime for releasing some fish, it's been cleaned up, it's maybe had a little bit of riparian planting, and the water quality is good, then they really interested in having giant Kokopu, and I think next year we'll have banded Kokopu as well, to release them into their stream. They will have to get permission from DOC to accept those fish. We want nature to be the controlling factor in the survival of these species. Us providing fish, nature taking over, will increase the potential for there to be more adult species in the streams and more whitebait in the oceans.